Hi, my name is Rodan Zadeh. My talk is about why big data is big business in Boston. So there are three parts to my talk: big data, big business, and putting it all together in Boston. So how many in this room don't know what is big data? Please raise your hand. I only have 15 seconds. At least there is one honest guy in this room. Big data is all the stuff you see in here. It's all about velocity, it's variety, it's volume, it's all the stuff, it's storage that you see there. Now, what I'm going to talk about is going to focus on finance, it's going to focus on technology, and yes, it's going to focus on some business, big business in Boston. There's been a lot of money going into big data in the world, and I'll talk about some of that aspect in terms of what's going on in Boston. If you look at this chart here, there are a ton of companies that were recently funded in the past 6 months. There are companies that are in retail, there are companies in healthcare, and there are a lot of bigger companies that are funding these, like Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook, and Intel. There is even more money coming in. If you look at some random number of companies that are being funded, we're talking about Series C's and Series D's. They continue to get funded. There is something fundamental going on here. There is continued interest in big data. And yes, there are big exits. As a matter of fact, one of the companies out there is our local PTC in Needham. They're all about IoT, and the focus is, hey, how can we make money out of big data? There is something to it. By the way, I mentioned there's big money in big data. There's big dough, yeah? The money itself is being digitized. And the idea here is that, as we know, innovations, money, all of that stuff no longer is in the physical domain. The idea here, if you think about what's going on, our world is shifting in a big way. All businesses are becoming digitized, and as businesses become digitized, every business is in the data business. Now, I mentioned about big data. Forget about big data. Let's focus on me for a second. As a matter of fact, I embody the idea of big. For those in the back of the room, I'm actually standing, I'm not sitting down. Big is me. Now, let's talk about what is big data and what is Boston and what it means to me. I'm not a poet, I don't run a theater company. I came to Boston to work. I met my wife here, I got married, and yes, I went to school in Boston. As a matter of fact, after decades of driving, this is where I learned how to drive, really. Now, while I was here, speaking of schools, I did a thesis, and I want to share some of that thesis with you. Since I only have 15 seconds to tell you about this thesis, I am going to give you the thesis on the thesis. While I was at school, I learned about this guy, Joe Pine. His idea was all about commoditization. The concept here is that if your products are a commodity, they're in the bottom, they're not differentiated, you can't really charge big money for it. And if you can't really charge big money for it, what does it really mean? It means that there is really no profit in what you're doing. So you don't want to be in the bottom of this commoditization chart. You want to be as higher as you can be. You want to sell experience. You want to sell transformation. And this is where big data comes in. When you think about IT, what's going on in the bottom aspect of the world of IT, the stack within IT, you're talking about storage, you're talking about networking, and yes, EMC is a big storage company here in Massachusetts. We have affinity to it. But all of that stuff is being commoditized because of open source, because of all kinds of stuff going on. So as IT become commoditized, big data becomes an important thing. Data was on top, as you saw in the last slide. Now, I don't know if Fred is in the room or not, but Fred coined the idea that Boston is becoming Haight-Ashbury of big data. And in a way, this explains why there are all these hippies running around in Central Square. Now, enough about big data and what the past entailed and how much money is going into it. People want to know what's next for big data. Where is this all going? Now, I want to share with you a thesis here from Jeff Moore. His idea was there are different aspects of big data that we've seen. The first phase that we saw was the advent of ERP, PC, used for managing supply chain. Dell made a lot of money using this concept. Supply chain management for systems of records. Next is system of engagement. This is where we are today. It's all about social, it's all about mobile, it's about cloud. And what we see is all about systems of engagement. How could companies help sell their product and delight their customers? And what is next is the advent of IoT, and this is what we're going to be seeing in the next decade with the concept of big data. We heard about VoltDB, and there's NoSQL databases going out, and web scale applications. All of this stuff combined together to provide trend detection and basically predicting what is in the future. So a big thank you for listening to me. I would love to talk to you more, and further, I would love for you guys to buy me a beer because this was a long talk. Thank you.